The door creaked open, and I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I wasn't supposed to be here, in his room, in his space. But the faint glow of a lamp and the soft strum of a guitar from somewhere inside pulled me forward. What I saw next shattered every assumption I'd held about Sam Carter and about myself. It was a late autumn evening in Brooklyn. The kind where the air smelled of damp leaves and the city hummed with a restless energy. Eli Harper was a 24-year-old barista with a knack for overthinking and a habit of losing my keys. Sam was my roommate, the guy with the easy smile and the infuriating habit of leaving dishes in the sink. We'd been living together for 6 months, splitting rent in a cramped walk-up apartment that groaned with every step. He was the outgoing one, always hosting friends, strumming his guitar at odd hours, while I was the quiet one, content with my books and my coffee shop shifts. We were opposites, or so I thought, until that night. I come home early from work, my shift cut short by a slow day. Sam wasn't supposed to be home. He texted about meeting friends at a bar in Williamsburg. The apartment was dark, save for a sliver of light spilling from under his bedroom door. I knocked lightly, assuming he'd left a lamp on by mistake. No answer. I pushed the door open, expecting an empty room. Instead, I saw him. Sam was sitting cross-legged on his bed, surrounded by a scattering of photographs, letters, and what looked like a journal. His head was bowed, his dark hair falling into his eyes, and his hands trembled as he held a photo of 2 young men. One of them unmistakably him, younger, with a shy smile. The other guy had his arm around Sam, their faces close, radiating a kind of joy that felt private, sacred. On the bed, an open letter caught my eye. The words, "I'm sorry I couldn't be enough," scrawled in messy handwriting. Eli. Sam's voice snapped me out of my trance. His eyes, usually bright with mischief, were wide with panic. "What the hell are you doing in here? Two thought you weren't home." I stammered, my face burning. The light was on, and I just, "Get out." His voice was low, sharp, like a blade cutting through the air. I backed away, heart pounding. But the image of that photo, that letter, was seared into my mind. Sam wasn't just my carefree roommate. He was hiding something. Samianuho had left a mark on him, deep and raw. I retreated to the living room, my thoughts spiraling. Sam had never mentioned a boyfriend, never hinted at being anything other than the straight, charming guy everyone loved. But the tenderness in that photo, the pain in his eyes, told a different story. And why did it make my chest ache in a way I couldn't explain? I'd always thought I knew who I was, Eli, the guy who kept to himself, who dated girls sporadically and never felt much of a spark. But seeing Sam like that, vulnerable and unguarded, stirred something in me I wasn't ready to name. The next morning, Sam acted like nothing had happened. He was at the kitchen counter, flipping pancakes with his usual grin, humming a tune I didn't recognize. "You want some?" he asked, sliding a plate toward me. I hesitated, the memory of last night still vivid. "Sam, about yesterday, forget it," he said quickly, his smile tightening. "Just a mess in my room. Old stuff." But it wasn't just old stuff. I could feel it in the way he avoided my eyes, in the way his fingers fidgeted with the spatula. I wanted to ask about the photo, the letter, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I nodded and took a bite of pancake, the silence between us heavy with unspoken questions. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop noticing him. The way his laugh filled the apartment. The way his hands moved when he played his guitar. The way his eyes softened when he thought no one was watching. I started looking for excuses to be around him, offering to grab coffee. Lingering in the kitchen when he cooked. It was like I was seeing him for the first time. And it terrified me. Was this just curiosity? Or was it something more? One night, we ended up on the rooftop of our building. A bottle of cheap wine between us. The city sparkled below. A sea of lights stretching into the distance. Sam leaned back against the ledge. His breath visible in the cool air. "You ever feel like you're running from something?" he asked. His voice quiet. I looked at him. His profile sharp against the city glow. "Yeah," I said, my heart racing. "Sometimes I don't even know what." He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. And for a moment, I thought he might say something real. But then he laughed, breaking the tension. "Guess we're both a little lost." I wanted to tell him I wasn't lost. Not anymore. That seeing him that night had cracked something open inside me. Something I couldn't ignore. But I didn't. I just nodded. And we sat there. The space between us electric with possibility. The days that followed were a blur of tension and unspoken words. Sam and I danced around each other. Our conversations polite but charged. Like we were both waiting for the other to break the silence. I couldn't shake the image of that photo. The boy with his arm around Sam. The pain etched into those handwritten words. Who was he? And why did it matter so much to me? Work became my escape. The coffee shop was a safe haven. Its familiar chaos of steaming milk and clinking mugs grounding me. But even there, Sam crept into my thoughts. I'd catch myself wondering what he was doing. If he was okay. If he was thinking about me the way I was thinking about him. It was maddening. I'd never felt this way about anyone. Let alone a guy. It was like my entire sense of self was unraveling. Thread by thread. One evening, I came home to find Sam on the couch. A beer in hand. Staring at the TV with the sound off. His face was drawn. His usual energy replaced by something heavy. "Rough day?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Just thinking." "About what?" I pressed, sitting across from him. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed to know. He took a long sip of his beer, then set it down with a thud. "You ever lose someone, Eli? Like, really lose them?" The question hit me like a punch. I thought of my mom, who'd passed when I was a kid. But this felt different. Personal. "Yeah," I said softly. "But not like you mean." He looked at me then, his eyes raw and unguarded. "His name was Jamie," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were everything. High school sweethearts. You know. Stupid. Young love. But then he got sick. And I couldn't." He stopped, his jaw tightening. "I couldn't save him." I didn't know what to say. The weight of his words filled the room, pressing against my chest. "I'm sorry." I managed. But it felt inadequate. Sam shook his head. "It's not your fault. It's just, I keep his stuff around because it's all I have left. That's what you saw that night. My past. Staring me in the face." I wanted to reach out, to touch his hand, to tell him he didn't have to carry it alone. But I didn't. I just sat there, letting his words settle over me like dust. "You don't talk about it," I said finally. "Why?" "Because it hurts," he snapped, then softened. "And because people don't get it. They see me, the guy who's always laughing, and they think that's all I am. But it's not. It never was." I saw him then. Really saw him. Not the charming roommate. Not the guy with the guitar. But Sam, broken, human, and more real than anyone I'd ever known. And in that moment, I realized I was falling for him. Not just curious. Not just intrigued. But falling, hard and fast, into something I didn't understand. The next few weeks were torture. Every glance, every brush of our shoulders in the kitchen, felt like a spark. I caught him watching me sometimes, his eyes lingering a little too long, and I wondered if he felt it too. But neither of us said anything. We were stuck in this fragile dance, too scared to step forward, too drawn to step back. Then came the night of the storm. A late November thunderstorm rolled through Brooklyn, the kind that rattled windows and turned the streets into rivers. The power went out, plunging our apartment into darkness. Sam lit candles, and we sat on the living room floor, sharing a blanket and a bottle of whiskey. The air was thick with the scent of rain and wax, and for once, the silence between us felt comfortable. "Truth or dare?" Sam asked, a playful glint in his eyes. I laughed, surprised. "What are we? 12? Come on," he teased. "Humor me." "Fine. Truth." He leaned closer, the candlelight flickering across his face. "What's the one thing you're most afraid of?" I swallowed, my mouth dry. The truth was clawing its way up, but I couldn't say it not yet. "Losing control," I said instead. "You." He hesitated, then said, "Being alone. Really alone." The words hung between us, heavy and true. I wanted to tell him he wasn't alone, that I was right here, that I saw him. But before I could, he leaned in, his lips brushing mine, soft and tentative. My heart stopped, then raced. As I kissed him back, the world narrowing to the warmth of his breath, the taste of whiskey, the electric hum of his skin against mine. When we pulled apart, his eyes were wide, searching. "Eli, don't," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't say anything yet." Because I knew, in that moment, that everything had changed, and I wasn't sure either of us was ready for what came next. The kiss changed everything. It was like a door had been flung open, letting in light and chaos in equal measure. Sam and I didn't talk about it the next morning, but the air between us crackled with something new, something fragile and exhilarating. I caught myself smiling at nothing, my heart racing every time he walked into the room. But with that joy came fear of what this meant, of what I was becoming, of whether Sam felt the same. Life in Brooklyn marched on, oblivious to the storm inside me. I threw myself into work, hoping the grind would quiet my thoughts. But it didn't. Every latte I poured, every customer I smiled at, felt like a performance. The real Eli was somewhere else, tangled up in feelings I didn't know how to name. Sam, meanwhile, seemed to retreat. He was still his charming self, but there was a distance in his eyes, a hesitation in his touch. I wondered if he regretted the kiss, if I'd misread everything. One afternoon, I found a note slipped under my bedroom door. Sam's handwriting. Messy but deliberate. Meet me at the pier. 7 p.m. My stomach flipped. Was this a date? Confrontation? I didn't know. But I went. Drawn to him like a moth to a flame. The Brooklyn Pier was crowded with couples and families. The air sharp with the scent of salt and fried food. Sam was waiting by the railing. His hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. His gaze fixed on the Manhattan skyline. The setting sun painted the water gold. And for a moment, he looked like he belonged in a painting beautiful. Untouchable. Hey, I said, my voice barely audible over the waves. He turned. His smile small but real. Hey, thanks for coming. We walked along the pier. The silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. Finally, he stopped and leaned against the railing. His eyes searching mine. I owe you an explanation, he said. About Jamie. About me. You don't owe me anything, I said. But my heart was pounding. I do. He insisted. Because I kissed you, Eli. And I don't know what that means. But I know it's not nothing. He told me about Jamie. His voice steady but laced with pain. They'd met in high school. 2 kids in a small town where being different wasn't an option. Jamie was the brave one. The one who held Sam's hand in secret. Who dreamed of a life where they didn't have to hide. But cancer took him before they could make it real. Sam had spent years running from that loss. Burying it under charm and laughter. Until I walked into his room and forced him to face it. I didn't expect you, he said. His voice breaking. I didn't expect to feel this again. My throat tightened. Feel what? He looked at me. His eyes raw and honest. You know what? I did. I felt it too, the pull. The ache. The terrifying thrill of wanting someone so much it hurt. But I was scared. Too. Scared of what it meant to love a man. To love Sam. When I'd spent my whole life thinking I was someone else. I don't know if I'm ready. I admitted. My voice barely a whisper. Me neither, he said. But he took my hand. His fingers warm against mine. But I don't want to run anymore. We stood there. Hand in hand. The city humming around us. It wasn't a promise. Not yet. But it was a beginning. A step into something neither of us fully understood but couldn't turn away from. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Sam and I grew closer. Our touches lingering. Our conversations deeper. We cooked dinner together. Laughed over bad movies. Stole kisses in the dark of our apartment. But the world wasn't as kind as our little bubble. I started noticing the looks subtle. But there when we held hands in public. A coworker at the coffee shop made a snide comment about roommates getting too close. And I brushed it off. But it stung. I wasn't used to this. To being seen in a way that felt so exposed. Sam noticed my unease. One night, as we lay on his bed, the city quiet outside, he traced circles on my palm. You okay? He asked. I don't know. I said honestly. This is all new. I'm not ashamed. But it's hard. People look at us like we're doing something wrong. He nodded. His expression soft but serious. I know. It's not fair. But it's real. If this is too much, it's not. I said quickly, squeezing his hand. I want this. I want you. He smiled, pulling me close. And for a moment, the world outside didn't matter. But deep down, I knew we couldn't stay in this bubble forever. The real test was coming, and I wasn't sure either of us was ready. The holidays brought a new kind of tension. Sam wanted me to meet his family, a small group of cousins and an aunt who'd raised him after his parents split. They were coming to Brooklyn for Christmas, and he was nervous, fidgeting with his guitar strings until they snapped. "They're not like me," he warned. "They don't know about Jamie. They don't know about..." I nodded, my stomach twisting. I wasn't sure I was ready to be us in front of strangers, but I couldn't let him face it alone. So I agreed, and we spent the week before cleaning the apartment, decorating a scrappy little tree, pretending everything was fine. The dinner was a disaster. His aunt, a kind but blunt woman, kept asking when Sam was going to settle down with a nice girl. His cousins made offhand jokes about his bachelor pad and how I must be the responsible one keeping him in line. Sam laughed it off, but I could see the strain in his eyes, the way his hand tightened around his glass. I wanted to reach for him, to tell them the truth, but fear kept me silent. After they left, Sam was quiet, staring out the window at the snow falling softly over Brooklyn. "I should have told them," he said finally. "I should have just said it." "You will," I said, stepping closer. "When you're ready." He turned to me, his eyes fierce. "I'm tired of hiding, Eli. I hid with Jamie, and it broke me. I don't want to do that with you." His words hit me like a tidal wave. I realized then that this wasn't just about it was about him reclaiming himself, about refusing to let the world dictate who he could love. And I wanted to be part of that, no matter how scary it was. The next day, Sam made a plan. He invited his family back for New Year's, determined to tell them the truth. I was terrified, but I promised to stand by him. We spent the days leading up to it talking, laughing, and sometimes crying, as we unpacked our fears and hopes. Sam told me about Jamie's dreams, how he'd wanted to open a music shop, how he'd believed love could change the world. I told Sam about my mom, how her loss had made me afraid to feel too much, and how he was changing that. New Year's Eve arrived, crisp and clear. His family came over, the apartment warm with the smell of roasted vegetables and wine. Sam stood up halfway through dinner, his hands shaking but his voice steady. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I'm gay. And Eli, he's not just my roommate. He's my partner." The room went silent. His aunt's face froze. His cousins exchanged glances. I braced myself for the worst, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. Then his aunt stood, walked over to Sam, and pulled him into a hug. "I love you," she said simply. "I just want you to be happy." One of his cousins smirked, but it wasn't cruel. "Took you long enough," he said, raising his glass. The tension broke, and the room filled with laughter, questions, and a warmth I hadn't expected. It wasn't perfect, there were awkward moments, hesitant smiles, but it was real. Later that night, as fireworks lit up the Brooklyn sky, Sam and I stood on the rooftop, wrapped in a blanket. "Thank you," he whispered, his breath warm against my cheek. "For what?" I asked, leaning into him. "For being here, for seeing me." I kissed him, slow and sure, the city alive below us. I thought of that night I'd walked into his room, how it had unraveled everything I thought I knew. I wasn't the same Eli anymore. I was someone braver, someone who loved fiercely, who wasn't afraid to be seen. We stood there, watching the new year dawn, and I knew this was only the beginning. The world wasn't always kind, but we'd face it together, two hearts, once hidden, now wide open, ready to write a story of our own.